All right, so now we're over here. We're putting on the trim board. There was one piece of wood. I don't know why they did it, but they did it. They put, they have a aluminum tow rail that holds the deck and the hull together, all the way down to the front. But then we had this piece of wood here at the back here, and so I took the old one off. It was all weathered and cracking, and then I found some good mahogany over at the lumber store and cut these two pieces. It took a long time to get the exact size, and I still didn't do it right. It's always better to create a template if you can, out of either really light stock or cardboard. The old rails were, the old cap was too far gone to use as a template. But now I finally got the right shape and the right size. The only problem is that they're not, I actually trimmed off about an inch here on the back or on the front, depending on which side I cut it off of. And that now made them a little too small to be useful for the top rail, top cap here. So I'm going to use these now as my template, and I'm going to add about an inch on the end here on the outside, and that will give me plenty of wood to work with. And then once I have that done, I'm going to actually create a slot here, if you can see that. Yep. So right here, the wood, I'm going to actually have a slot instead of a open part there, and that will give me a nice trim piece. And then once I'm going to paint it with some epoxy resin to make it waterproof, and then I'll be varnishing it with 8 to 10 coats of varnish. It's always a fun thing that resin is not UV. Boy, the guy would be a millionaire if he could invent UV safe resin. He would save himself a lot of time. Anyway, so you can see down here the name is on, and here's where the top rail goes, top cap. And anyways, so that'll be one of the last projects before I launch. The boat is ready to launch right now, but I was given bad news. They are so busy they can't launch me for 2 more weeks, almost 3 weeks. So it's going to be really, I'm going to be wasting my time for the next couple weeks. But I've got projects I can do on the boat, on the dry, on the hard, to get those things done. Anyways, so there's the rail now in place. It looks pretty good for what it is. It needs a back piece. So and then I tried using a straight piece thinking I could bend it, but I don't have a steam box, and it has to bend in like 3 different directions. So there's no way you can bend that by hand, and the wood is just too stiff and not flexible enough to conform. So I'm going to have to actually get a wider piece of wood from the lumber yard tomorrow, and then cut myself a new back piece that's going to have to be curved. Anyways, that's where we are right now. So I've got a couple things done. It's really nice finally to get those things done. Another method of doing the same thing would be to take very thin strips and then epoxy them together, like I did for the hatch, for the companionway hatch. And that's not a bad idea. The only thing there is that I have to cut maybe 15-20 strips and then glue them all together, make sure they're the right, make sure I have enough length, and that could be one way of doing it. And then it would match what I have already going on here with the companionway hatch, although I kind of messed it up. I didn't put enough varnish on there when I first built it. So one of these days I'll rebuild that hatch the same way, but I will use I will make sure it has plenty of varnish on it when I finish, because it was so gorgeous when I first built it, and I let it get the sun really burned out the resin, the epoxy resin. So, and now it's kind of smoky, and you can see the wood a little bit, but it's not near as half as gorgeous as it was. And then my doors, they've lasted for about 4 years. They're red oak. Red oak's supposed to be water loving, but I put plenty of epoxy resin on them and then varnished them. But obviously it wasn't enough because the doors are starting to fall apart. And the thing is, they're not falling apart where the resin is or where the epoxy glued them together. They're falling apart along other seams of the wood. So that's another thing. So one of the things that I realized when I had them built is that the doors, the doors were a little too tight. I had very tight tolerances where all the wood met together, and so it put a lot of pressure on the doors while they were closed. And I think that actually caused a lot of the damage because of the expansion and contraction during the winter and the summer. The wood is cracking along certain grain along the grain. So it's a good idea to make sure that the next time I build these, and I might build them out of some plasticized wood, some fake stuff. But the point is that I want to make sure that the doors, like right now I sanded off quite a bit of the wood to have them fit better. So you can see here the wood is sanded down. There's no binding anymore. This used to bind a little bit, and then that used to bind a little bit when it closed. And you'd actually have to put them together like this and then shove them closed, so they were pushing on all four sides of the doors along the bottom. The top, you can see right here where the wood is splitting right here. I had to glue that on last year, and then it's splitting along the bottom here. I think I already glued that on last fall. So I sanded down the sideboards here, and I put a couple, about 3 or 4 coats of varnish on right now. I'll have to put some more on. But anyways, the point is, now I've sanded the doors so that they open without any binding, and I think that's really helpful to keep the stresses on the door where they need to be and not artificially putting them on. So anyways, various parts of the door now I'm gonna have to get some more resin and seal those up so that they're waterproof. And then now these obviously don't get hit by the sun as much, so I don't need to put a lot of varnish on the edges here, but the doors themselves were sanded down a little bit, so they'll need some more varnish. And get the doors set up for the fall. So I can take these out and actually do them in the shop if I need to, because the drop doors that I had originally on here, I designed this setup so that I could actually use those doors if I need to. They're interchangeable, but having hinge doors and removable hinge doors is so much better than having those drop panels in there. For how many years we had those, and I can't tell you how much better having these hinge doors is for livability. Also, you have windows in them so that you can see out, see if anybody's climbing in the boat or who's in the boat if they're coming aboard. And so it gives you just everything you need for both security and livability. Anyways, that's it for now. I'm going to come back later, and I'm working right now on getting our new bilge pump set up, because the bilge plug is in, so that means the boat is ready to launch. I can't have the bilge plug in without the bilge pump, and if I have the plug out, I can't launch. And I can't trust the boatyard to make sure that the bilge plug is in before they launch, so I don't want to trust them to do it, because if you trust other people and they fail, you lose your boat. and I don't want to be in that situation. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the bilge plug in, and I'm going to make sure that the new bilge pump is working, because we did have a failure last year of the after we ran aground, and I don't think it had anything to do with running around. I think it was just the end of the life of that switch. We had a switch that failed, a Johnson pump switch, and I liked it because it was an internal switch. It wasn't a flapper valve, because I don't like the float switches, because if there's any debris in your bilge, if you have a knockdown or something and something falls onto the cabin sole and somehow gets into the bilge, it could sit on top of that float, and then the bilge pump switch won't work. So I like the internal ones, because the internal ones then, unless you just dump like a gallon of sawdust into your bilge, and it gets wet and then flows into inside the float switch, you won't have a problem with that. So instead, I got a bilge pump with a built-in internal switch this time, so it's all-in-one. I don't necessarily like that, because what turned out was the pump itself was fine. I didn't know that, but the switch was bad, and as a result, obviously, I've just thought and then we have an identical bilge pump up in the bow, and that one wasn't working properly either. So I'm thinking, oh my God, I have two bilge pumps that died all at the same time. So anyways, I replaced the main one here in the main cabin, and the one in the front I'll take a look at this summer and just see if it's still working properly. It's high enough that it doesn't actually even kick in unless we have a lot of water in the bilge. So it's not really a useful one, except when we have a lot of, especially when it rains, we get a lot of water all at once, and then the bilge fills up, and then the pumps both kick in, and then the bow one kicks out when the water drops down, and then only the main one is going off. So, and then I have I have two large bilge pumps. I have a hand pump, a Whale over here, that's not working, so I've got to replace that. And then I've got a main electrical bilge pump that's very large volume, but unfortunately I never had that set up since I bought the boat. So that's one of the goals for this summer. Now that we're running out of big tasks to do, is start working on the little tasks. I tell you, having a 40-plus-year-old boat, there's always something to do. There's always something that needs to be repaired or replaced or fixed. And it's just a never-ending task. It almost gets daunting after a while. You're always going like, okay, what went wrong now? What do I need to take care of this time? And anyways, that's the report. That's the status, and we're getting now inside the cabin to work on the bilge pump. So talk to you later.